Hi, and welcome to Lambda U. My name is Jessica, and I'm a Solutions and Support Scientist at Lycor. Now that you have a better understanding of running your gels and transferring the proteins, we'll move on to the best practices of how to block your membrane for near-infrared or NIR detection. Blocking the membrane is a very important step of Western blotting, as it prevents antibodies from binding to the membrane non-specifically. The blocking step can have the greatest impact on the signal of your target protein, the background, and the presence of non-specific bands. Before you start the blocking step, it's very important to read your protocol thoroughly, gather all of your reagents, and grab a timer. Check the labels on your reagents and make sure that none of them are expired. Also, you want to make sure that you prepare your blocking buffer immediately before you use it. Not using fresh reagents or using expired reagents will lead to inefficient blocking of your membrane and high background on your blots. As discussed in the equilibrating gel and preparing for transfer course, if you're using a PVDF membrane, ensure that it is low fluorescent. If the PVDF membrane is not designed for fluorescent Western blots, the background signal can be higher than your target signal. Whether you're using a nitrocellulose or PVDF membrane, keep your membrane protected throughout the entire Western blot protocol. The easiest way to prevent contamination of the membrane with either lint or dust is to always store it in a closed incubation box. These contaminants can lead to speckling on your blot. Once you've added your secondary antibody to the membrane, store the membrane in a light-tight container to prevent photobleaching of the fluorophores. In the drying the membrane course, we recommended that you dry your membrane after you transfer the proteins from the gel to the membrane. This drying step ensures that the proteins are more firmly bound to your membrane, which is going to prevent them from being removed during the wash step. It also will lead to an increase in sensitivity. To rehydrate your dried nitrocellulose membrane, you're going to want to wash it in either PBS or TBS for 2 minutes. This is going to allow the pH to become balanced. Then you can place it directly into your blocking buffer. To rehydrate a dried PVDF membrane, reactivate it in 100% reagent-grade methanol for 1 minute with gentle agitation. This will allow the PVDF to become more hydrophilic. Do not dilute your methanol, as a lower percentage of methanol will not ensure that the membrane becomes completely hydrated. Also, avoid using ethanol because it can contain impurities. You want to avoid isopropanol because it is not as effective as methanol in hydrating the PVDF. Once the membrane is rehydrated, rinse it in distilled water to remove any methanol and then incubate it in either PBS or TBS, again to allow the membrane to become balanced with the pH. Then you can take it and place it directly into the blocking buffer. Now, if you have not dried your membrane after transfer, you can just simply wash it in either TBS or PBS and then place it directly in the blocking buffer. As you start running multiple Western blots at one time, you may be tempted to put all the membranes in one incubation box to save on reagents. This really isn't a good idea. If you have 2 membranes in an incubation box, one membrane can become stuck to the other membrane. This would prevent the antibodies from binding to the antigen on your target protein. Also, if the membranes bind to each other, the proteins in the blocking solution will not be able to effectively bind to and block the membrane. This will lead to high background. To ensure that your antibodies have unhindered access to your antigen, only put one membrane in your incubation box at a time. When placing your membrane in the incubation box, make sure that your membrane is protein side up. If the membrane comes in contact with the surface, such as the bottom of the incubation box, the proteins can detach from your membrane. Once in the incubation box, close the lid or cover the box to ensure that no contaminants can get into your membrane. Now that you have a better understanding of the important considerations for drying, rehydrating, and protecting your membrane, we will discuss some tips to ensure even blocking of your membrane.